more fuel on the fire that there's a potential, maybe a divorce or some sort of rockiness going on in the Obamas' relationship. Even knowing that there are divorce rumors and, she's not showing up for him, whether it's at the Jimmy Carter funeral or the Trump inauguration or the basketball game he just went to in LA, when visiting their daughters and then dinner with the daughters, was not there. Here she is talking about it. If it were me, I would say something nice about him. I would say he's just so charming. It was meant to be. I knew he could heal the earth in the way he did. There was only one person who could do it, and it was my husband, Barack Obama, whatever. Then she gets on to talking a little bit about him personally, and this is how...
Yes, I don't know if you've realized this, Democrats are waking up. It's like they have been sleeping the whole years. They want to do podcasts. Gavin Newsom is there struggling. Michelle Obama has been taking a lot of time preparing for this. I was actually shocked, to see her podcast and the views she racked up the first day. Embarrassing. seriously. I went through the comment section to see, it's like people who watch that podcast just went there, just to salvage everything.
Primetime's been wondering where Michelle Obama's been. She snubbed both Jimmy Carter's funeral and Trump's inauguration. And last week, Barack went to a basketball game all by himself. Turns out Michelle's been busy working on a new podcast, and so far, it's been a flop. The first 2 episodes have been up all day and only gotten a few thousand views on YouTube. Half of them are probably primetime producers. But still, Michelle's spilling the family secrets, like how Barry gets on her nerves. Listen.
Barack, he had to adjust to what on time was for me.
Because he was on that island time.
Well, but, I've got this husband who's like, when it's time to leave, it's 3:00, he's getting up and going to the bathroom. And I was like, dude, like 3:00 departure means you've done all that, It's like, don't start looking for your glasses, at the 3:00 departure. But he's improved over 30 years of marriage. But that was you must adjust.
Michelle says her husband doesn't really like people, doesn't know how to talk to him, and doesn't even really care.
When a girlfriend comes to visit, it's usually like, you got to stay for 2 days because it's going to take us
so much time to come
check up. Now, Barack's come in, he's come out, and he's like, y'all still talking? He'll sit down for 5 minutes, be like, how are the boys? And the flip side of my husband, right? Because he golfs. And golfing takes as long as the first session of it takes 5 hours to golf. He'll golf with his buddies, come back, and be like, how's X? He's good. It's like, what'd y'all talk about? Nothing.
Hate to break it to Michelle, but guys don't get deep on the course. Normally, when someone rags on their spouse, there's usually a little love. Like, Jimmy, he never listens, but he looks cute in his suit. But that wasn't cute. Did she drop this podcast to distance herself from Barack so she could run for president? Every politician starts a podcast right before they launch their next campaign. Looking at you, Gavin.
It had about 8,000 dislikes. That is to tell you something. Libras thought this is a good idea because they believe that Trump won because of people like Joe Rogan. He went on podcasts, so the best thing is for them to sit up and start doing podcasts like that. That is exactly what they are doing now. Ask yourself why in 2025, everything now revolves around podcasts. Oh, this one want to do. Oh, this, Oprah started all that time. Now, Michelle Obama, it's like people are not really interested, in listening to what they are even talking in that show. I expected, the first episode to be high up there, but I was shocked, embarrassed to see that. It flopped.
We were physically close growing up.
Remember when we used to share a bedroom?
Of course, that was our life growing up. We shared the same room until you went to high school, right?
That's right.
Well, let's first just recall how small the apartment we lived in. It seemed like it was huge, but it was essentially 2 bedrooms right?
No, it was one bedroom.
Well, that little offshoot bedroom that mom and dad stayed in, you would consider that a bedroom.
But that was the only bedroom. The room we were in was actually the living room. And the living room what we called the living room was actually the dining room.
Huh. Okay. Well, I couldn't have gotten through 8 years in the White House without my big brother. But you talked me into supporting his run. And he was smart enough to know that he needed to come to you and sell you on the idea.
Everything happened so fast because Barack went from a state senator to a U.S. senator. And next thing you know, people were saying, this guy should run for president. You were like, no.
There's a lot in there, Glenn. That does not sound like somebody who's in favor of his run for president or frankly in favor of him. Like, he was smart and ambitious. Think about if that's that's why you thought that your spouse was going to run for and possibly become president. I mean, he's smart and he's ambitious. None of what Barack Obama actually ran on, right? I want to change the world. I want to heal the country, hope and change. She wasn't buying it, and it doesn't sound like she buys it to this day.
Yeah, I have to say there's a part of that with which I can empathize, because if you run for president, your entire family is subjected to immense amount of public scrutiny. Every aspect of your life is picked apart and disclosed. And the role of First Lady is not necessarily the freest role. There's expectations of what you're supposed to do and can't do, the decorum that limit what you can do. So I'm not necessarily going to say that I think it's outrageous that wasn't something that she wanted for her life or expected for her life. But if that's really how she feels, and there's been reports for a long time that is how she feels, it has to produce a lot of resentment. I mean, he ended up doing what she insists she didn't want him to do. And she did end up being First Lady for 8 years. And if that really is the kind of thing that she disliked doing.
Yes, when you take a look at this, right-wing influencers on X celebrated this week as former First Lady Michelle Obama's new podcast debuted to disappointing numbers on YouTube. Miss Obama and her brother Greg Robinson announced the launch of a video podcast Monday, promising weekly episode and dropped 2 episodes to kickstart the new venture. Podcast uploaded 2 episodes Wednesday morning that attracted 47,000 and 15,000 views, with total viewership in 24 hours reaching just 62,000. The 2 episodes touched on subjects including divorce and other aspects of their personal lives. How the episode performed on other platforms such as Spotify, Apple was not immediately clear. So you can see how people really expected her to do better.
I woke up this morning fully expecting the outrage of the day to be something that like Trump did, or the fact that Jared Golden, a Democrat, voted for the continuing resolution last night, which is also insane. And then I see this. I see that Gavin Newsom has decided to invite Steve Bannon on his podcast, and they're going to have just a wonderful conversation. Last week, he had Charlie Kirk on his podcast. That I didn't get extremely outraged about, even though Kirk is one of the bad guys. Bannon is the author of this chaos we're seeing right now. Bannon is the one that says you need to flood the zone with shit. Bannon is the one that has basically authored where we are and what Donald Trump wants. And because Gavin Newsom wants to run for president and thinks he's going to be this healer, he brings on this nationalist. Many of us on the right sacrificed our careers taking these people on, and Newsom's trying to make a career with them. This is insane.
We got to talk about Gavin Newsom and his new podcast. And the most recent MAGA guest that he had on his podcast is Steve Bannon. I listened to the whole thing. It was very substantive, a really interesting conversation.
On the other hand, Gavin Newsom is receiving massive backlash on social media like never before. Gavin Newsom is thinking to run for president. I don't know if all these liberals just believe that podcast is just the way to the presidency or what exactly. Gavin Newsom appeared with Steve Bannon. What I saw with liberals, the kind of meltdown they put out about this, I've not seen before. They are crying. The other day, they try It's like Gavin Newsom struggling to associate with people. On the other side, it's a problem to liberals. This is a major issue I notice with these people. They just believe like they should be on their own space, maybe on their own wall. If you are a liberal, you should not associate with any other person. You should just stay there. And that is the beginning of their failure. That is not how it works. If you are thinking to run for president or hold a public post, you should be able to associate with people from different views, people you disagree with. You want to be a leader, then you don't want to talk to. It is crazy. It has no work for Democrat. Reason you see them reassembling themselves, to sort this out. I don't know what will happen at the end of the day.
This is a poor strategy for Gavin Newsom. I actually did think that he was one of the leaders that would come out in terms of 2028. I remember watching his annual State of the Union address in California, and he criticized Republicans, and he promoted California as an antidote to the poisonous populism of the right.
It's the same thing that when I see not all black Republicans, but when I see a black MAGA person,
sincere black Republican.
I don't think that you can.
Pushing 2 months in. I mean, you must have a feeling in your gut.
Foreign